Jefe, suba el sueldo, vea. Vea cómo estamos trabajando. El clima de Cuenca está terrible. En esas condiciones, ¿cómo pues? Nos merecemos un incentivo siquiera. ¿Ustedes de dónde?
Deja de tomar todo. Deja, please, come in, please. Deja put him to my trouble over here. Deja broken the window. Deja broken the window over here. Deja saber tu más trouble.
Get in the car. Give me my car, bitch. Give me my.
¿Le tomaron las placas ahora? Okay.
Give me my car.
No, le quítense. Deja come in, please. Yes. Deja ser here en el Wendy de la South Road.
No orden.
So guys, there's just videos out of Wendy's where there are two young women who kick down the glass, window, and then just start a food fight. Like they start throwing chicken nuggets and making a large mess and everything like that. And there's another clip of actually the workers responding and throwing like water on them. So I do want to talk a lot about this. That, first of all, this is a black fatigue video. So obviously it shows a lot of that, ghetto, as somebody puts it, that wild hyena hood rat behavior. And it perpetuates a couple of stereotypes of black, girls being violent, of, African Americans. They love their fast food. They just can't go home and cook well. And then also just unapologetic disrespect, really. And as we all know that, this is not all black people. And then the other thing that we also know, too, is that, if you ever work at a hospital or you go to a college, there's all groups of people working there, and there's definitely a lot of African-American nurses, really. So sometimes when videos like this exist, it perpetuates a stereotype that, black women are something to avoid, something to never have babies with because, they produce this and stuff like that, really. So it's unfortunate, but that does happen a lot with African-Americans, that when a few people act horribly and in a very shocking and apologetic way, there's a lot of people that just say that's the whole race, really. That's why this behavior has to be criticized by a lot of people, including black people, to say, hey, you know what, this is just indignant shit, really. The other thing about this is that, yes, as I talked before, there is also stereotypes of African Americans having poor diets. It kind of stems from the fried chicken stereotype where black people were doing like good for themselves by, raising chickens and, growing their own food and everything like that, really. And then people turn it into, oh, well, they're chicken thieves, therefore they love fried chicken. And then later on in the 50s, there are other stereotypes like they love unhealthy food, really. So when you see behavior like this, it creates that stereotype that, okay, black people have an insatiable appetite for unhealthy food and stuff like that. Like I think the film Friday, if I'm correct, is about a black family that has a very bad diet. They cook bad food, but there's also a stereotype of black people love fast food and other unhealthy foods by this behavior, really. Like they want to get their ways, really. And then also perpetuates another stereotype of African Americans being entitled, because some people have shown videos, like there's this guy who was black who went to a Chinese restaurant and he's asking for a senior discount. He's pronouncing words wahangs with an H-A-N-G, or sometimes they say, when another stereotypes when black people go to restaurants, they want, executive service, really. You go to McDonald's, they want extra ketchups, they want things done in a certain way, really, like be wine and dine, really. And I understand that comes from that also kind of comes from like how black people were treated traditionally, like where they were always really disrespected, so therefore they want to have some entitlement, really. That, and as I said, that's some black people. That's not all black people. But there's also like a side of like that stereotype of entitlement, and then it also perpetuates stereotype of what we see nowadays with all groups of people, especially white people and black people, of generation entitlement. Because again, I grew up in the '80s. And I went through the '90s, and I would never dream of behaving like this. I would never dream of behaving like this, and in any type of way, because of like just how self-embarrassing and shameful it is, and how my dad would have been on me really if I ever behaved like this. Because this is kind of like really unapologetic behavior. The other thing that I'm gonna say is that a lot of people don't realize, but a lot of like people who work at those jobs, they deal with a lot of shit really. Because what's gonna happen after this is that they have to write an incident report. The next thing is that they're gonna force all their workers, like if they all get out at 10 p.m., they're gonna say, no, you're not staying, you're not leaving at 10 p.m., you're leaving at 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. to clean up this mess and sanitize the place. And then after you do that, if you're working the morning shift, tough. You're gonna be back at 6 a.m. or 8 a.m. for the breakfast shift. That's what they signed up for. And other stuff like that, or you're fired. Or managers have to stay over. Imagine if because then they get paid salary. So imagine if they have to work like 40 hours, 60 hours, 70 hours, 80 hours, and they're not allowed to leave. They're not allowed to leave because they have to take care of this shit. And then another big problem is that usually a lot of times when stuff like this happens, usually people are in vehicles. So what happens is that these girls could drive away, they can never get caught, and then they may say something like, "Oh, we're gonna come back, we're gonna bring our crew," or "Oh, well, we want blood," or stuff like that. So there's always a chance that there's always a high probability that a lot of people will quit their job after this because they're like, "Hey, you know what? I am afraid that I'm afraid of retaliation." And there's also a stereotype that black people are gangbangers, or they have their guns on them, or they're just like from the hood really, and they all they want to do is shoot and kill really. So some people may quit their jobs because they're like, oh well, these black girls like come back with guns and knives and everything like that. And then I think that they were charged. So it also is bad as well really because as I said, if judges and other people look at that, there's a black fatigue movement in this country. Even though there should be fatigue for everybody, I think it shouldn't be black fatigue. It should be entitlement fatigue. But when things like this happen, then it says, hey, you know what? Then a judge may say, hey, we're gonna give you guys extra time. We're gonna make it extra severe because it's very evidential that a lot of young people nowadays are very entitled and unapologetic, or black fatigue that you just did all this damage, and it adds to the stereotypes. Or if people consistently see videos of like this, really, then a lot of people are going to say, okay, maybe black people need more punishment than white people. I even heard this on Instagram that there's a lot of people who are talking about that we should start calling black people niggers again to kind of coach them to stop with this ghetto gangbanger attitude, really. And 100% that's not correct. That's not right, really, because obviously it has nothing to do with race. It has everything to do with one-on-one behavior. What I do with my life reflects me. It should not reflect my race, really. And that's true with anybody, because always that thing too, like with all the issues that people say about Donald Trump, really, a lot of people don't say white fatigue each time he does something crazy. But with black people, it's always that thing too, like as I say, first hired, first fired, first one to do wrong, the first one to be judged, type of thing, really. Or one does wrong, all does wrong, or one does wrong, all to be judged, really. So I'm not trying to say that black people need to be model citizens or perfect or anything like that. I'm just saying that, definitely like this over the top behavior is completely messed up, is unacceptable, is embarrassing. And I really hope they get criminal charges. And I also hope that a lot of people understand too that, food services workers, that's a very bad industry. I think food service is the most stressful industry because of stuff like this, really. It's ungrateful. You don't get paid a lot. There's a lot of sanitation laws that you have to follow. There's also a lot of times where bosses will force you to stay over, or they'll change your schedule, or they'll say, okay, everybody, imagine if this is like at 7 at night and someone wants to go see their kid have a birthday party, or there's a person who wants to have a date, or there's a mom who wants to get home and take care of their kids, and then telling their other brothers and sisters, telling the older brothers and sisters, you got to raise the kids a little bit because I'm at work. Oh, well, now everybody gets delayed. Everybody has to stay there for a few more hours because of this. And, part of what's going to happen, a lot in their brains, they're probably going to be saying, oh, those goddamn fucking niggers are causing me to stay over. And then there's also BET, Black Experience Trauma, because there are going to be people quitting their jobs at that Wendy's because of what these girls did. Like, they're like, okay, you know what? And then you go through like blaming black people, or also too like what would happen if they're looking for new employees and a few of them are black. They may be like, okay, well, because we had a bad experience with a couple of you black people, we ain't gonna hire you. They're not gonna say that, but that also is true. That that these incidences also make it harder for African Americans to get jobs or anything like that, or even black women to get jobs, because they're gonna say maybe we're afraid of like the hyena behavior, really. It's unfortunate that sometimes when one person does wrong, people jump into racism. But that's why when you do wrong, really, you have to understand that you're representing more than just yourself, really. Like, I'm going to go to Japan in a couple of weeks. But if I took out my camera and I was like, doing selfies, or if I was like blasting 50 Cent, and if I was disrespecting people, or they say like people in Japan are very patient, so I was walking around slapping girls on the ass or grinding on women or harassing people, you know what? I'm gonna make myself look like an N-word. I'm gonna make a lot of black people look like an N-word. They may do something where they may have me on national news, and they may say, hey, you know what? This is why black people should not be allowed to travel abroad, because that's how they behave, really. All those things could happen based on my own behavior. So that's why I want to go to Japan. Like, I'm very fucking busy, but I will make time to study behavior. I know good behavior. And then also, too, my father was in my ass when I was a kid. He was up my ass. He was in my ass. He was almost like Full Metal Jacket, really. And that was good because it taught me not to go out in society and be an asshole, really. And I worked at many jobs where I've dealt with, with like hood rats and other types of people as well, really. It's not great to be disrespected, really. So, honestly, it's unfortunate that this happened. And as I said, it's also unfortunate we live in a society where if one black person does wrong, a lot of people will have the mentality of that's just the whole race. It creates consequence for other black people, even though it shouldn't be like that. But importantly, your actions don't just represent yourself, really. And that's why we need to treat people better, and also understand food service people should get the utmost respect, really. They should not be just walked all over. Very unfortunate this happened. I hope they're charged with assault and vandalism and other things like that. And I think we need to live in a society throwing the book at people a lot more, because there's a lot of leniency.